Welcome everyone to another episode of Underdog Podcast. My name is Patrick. I'm here with James.
What's going on?
And Gerald.
Hello.
And we've got an awesome show for everyone today, and we'd like to thank Design Mentality for sponsoring the podcast. And today's show, we're going to be talking about the craziness that was in the NFL trade deadline. We're going to talk about our feature games of the week, NBA and NFL. And is it panic mode in the NBA later on in the show. So with the NFL trade deadline done, it's been some interesting stories, and specifically we have 4 big trades that happened that have significant impacts for teams. So we're just going to go over it one by one. So starting off, let's talk about a bit of a surprise. Dwayne Brown being sent over from Houston to Seattle, which significantly upgrades that offensive line and Russell Wilson. Your take on that, James?
Yeah, I think Seattle basically got a steal here with this trade. Like, I don't really understand why Houston gave him away, especially when you have Deshaun Watson, who's playing really, really well right now, and this is the guy that protects his blind side. I don't know why you would make your team worse, and your team definitely gets worse by losing this player to get him away. There was some noise saying that the owner's comments that had happened, which basically the owner used an analogy but kind of misspoke in the analogy, and some people took offense to it and got very offended, rightly so. And
that was the prisoners taking over the prison comment.
Yeah, so the players basically had a meeting with the owner, and Dwayne Brown was one of the outspoken players. Probably the most outspoken player in the meeting, so I think that may have had something to do with it.
Of course it did, because you're looking at the actual trade, Dwayne Brown and a 5th rounder. If, he's one of the top guys, offensive lineman in that position. And he was traded for a 3rd rounder this year and then a 2nd rounder next year.
Which, those are 2 good picks. A 3rd and a 2nd rounder in the NFL, those are very, you get a lot of good players for a cheap amount of money.
I'm just surprised that they got a pick as well with him.
Yeah.
That was pretty good steal for Seattle.
Just the one thing is, offensive linemen, especially left tackles, are so hard to come by in the draft. So, you could have a deep draft and not find a good left tackle. So,
yeah,
it's just interesting to see that they gave him up, but I don't know. It doesn't make sense, because Houston's a team that's thinking about winning. And they just got Deshaun Watson. Their defense is great. Fair enough, maybe J.J. Watt went down. There's some other question marks on your defense, guys that have gone down. Whitley Mercius also has gone down. But at the end of the day, you have a chance to do something here, and you trade away a key asset and a key piece to the team. It just doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, and my opinion with the whole owner, the analogy he used, I'm not really buying it. I understand he really needs to, he'll apologize, and maybe some people that's enough. To me, what bothers me is you don't use that. The only way you use that analogy is if you're a warden in a prison. If you're comparing workers to prisoners taking over, especially with how sensitive the whole, what they're standing up for, a lot of the players and the kneeling. I just feel it was so bad timing, and obviously this happened in a closed door meeting with the owners, when these comments were made. So I'm not really sure why it came out when it did.
And the players, though. It was the players were meeting in the meeting as well. And basically, I think the media had not necessarily a link, but they were going to be informed of what the meeting, maybe the log of the meeting and how it went. I think that was open, it was kind of an open door meeting. So that's when it was said. And like I said, I think he misspoke. Obviously, what he misspoke was not a good thing.
The worst thing he could possibly ever say.
Or added into that phrase.
Just fueled the fire, just too much. And I'd be happy if I was Dwayne Johnson.
Dwayne Brown.
Or Dwayne Brown, sorry.
Yeah. And he actually wanted to go to Seattle. They played Seattle this upcoming week, which, by the way, if you didn't watch it, was the game of the year. That game was intense. Deshaun Watson is the real deal, and Russell Wilson also showed out. But during that, there was some reports that he was really interested in joining their team, because Seattle's a very outspoken team. All of the guys on Seattle are very outspoken, very conscious about their social surroundings, and it seems like Dwayne Brown is also like that. So I think he feels like he's going to be at home there. So good for him. I think he's going to make the team great. So we'll see what happens.
Next actually surprises New England Patriots traded Jimmy Garoppolo. Basically, the last backup Tom Brady has, because they traded Brissett early on as well. So now it looks like Tom Brady's alone in New England, even though they did sign
they just signed Brian Hoyer, yeah.
Brian Hoyer, which wouldn't surprise me if he turned into a career year under Belichick.
After being horrible for the beginning.
That would be so hilarious. It would just make Cleveland look even worse. But that being said, your takeaways from that trade, do you think it was a steal? Because he was traded for a second rounder. So,
yeah, I don't know. First, like for me personally, I don't know how much
49ers.
I believe in Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know. Like, I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just not saying he's good. He has only taken 94 snaps in the NFL, so it's very, very small sample size, but we'll see what goes forward. I definitely think he's a good option to look for if you want a franchise quarterback, because we don't really know with him yet, and he's a guy who's been under Brady and Belichick, so he's probably really knows how to dig in and dig into the system and really like be a professional, so that's definitely going to help him. But I just don't know how much I buy into it. But as for the market value of him right now, just because he is a quarterback and he is young and is kind of unknown and not a lot of people know and very talented, I think that the 49ers got a steal here, because I think the beginning of this year and towards the draft last year, the Patriots were like almost getting offers for first rounders. But I think at the time, the Patriots, well, we know from, if you take Belichick for his word, he had a press conference that basically said that they loved Jimmy Garoppolo. They really didn't want to get rid of him, but this was the time, like it was it. They had to make a decision right now if they were going to either sign him or let him walk next year for nothing. So they had to make that choice. They tried to sign him over the past like 2 or 3 weeks, but just couldn't come to terms with a deal. And it's hard for them because Brady takes pay cuts. So you have Tom Brady as your starting quarterback, beast, best quarterback in the league, or probably right now, won a Super Bowl last year. This guy's taking pay cuts, but you have a young guy that you think is really good and can maybe take over for Brady. But this guy's young and hasn't made any money yet, and he wants to make money and play and do all these things. So it's like they were kind of stuck.
They were in a similar situation last year when they traded to the Cleveland Browns. I can't remember on the Patriots.
Last year.
He had his career year and he was getting ready to sign a big deal.
I think it was a linebacker. I forget his name though. Yeah, I know who you're talking about though.
So it's what the Patriots do.
Yeah,
it's almost like they maximize what they can get.
It's definitely what they do. They basically take as much time as possible to kind of figure out, okay, what can we do here? And they basically determined that this trade deadline was the time they had to decide either we're going to re-sign him and we are going to give him more money, or they're going to basically trade him and get
Jamie Collins,
that's it. So It's one of those things where this is definitely the Patriots way. This is what they do. But it's just going to be interesting to see how he is in San Francisco, and they only had to give up a second rounder. One last little quick thing I will say on the second rounder though is obviously we know the 49ers are 0-8. So they're probably not going to do very well even with Garoppolo this year. Yeah. So that first rounder is going to be like a 33rd or 34th pick because there's only 32 teams in the league. Everyone has a first rounder. So second round starts around 33. So it's going to be a low 30s pick probably. And the good thing about those picks, those are actually considered the best picks because you don't have the same guaranteed money as you do as a first round pick to a second round pick. The contracts are not guaranteed. So they can actually get a guy kind of on the fringe first, second round.
With just as much talent.
With just as much talent as a guy from the first round and not have to paying any money. And just to give you a little bit of perspective on what kind of guys you can get from that pick is Dalvin Cook was, I think, selected 34th. So he was like the second or third pick in the second round. And look at him. He dominated this year for Minnesota. So they can definitely get some talented guys at that position and not have to pay them a lot of money, which is obviously good for your cap space. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the Patriots do.
Okay, next up, well, you can kind of say these were all surprises, but Kelvin Benjamin got shipped out of Carolina after having pretty good few past weeks. He has been banged up and a history of knee injuries. So maybe they were another team that wanted to capitalize on, the potential of Kelvin Benjamin, because they sent him to the Bills for a 3rd and 7th rounder. So your thoughts on that? Because I think it's also a good move on their part if you look at it that he's reunited with Sean McDermott.
Yeah. I'm a little skeptical about this one. I don't really know how to feel about it, because what confuses me the most is I feel like this makes Carolina worse. Unless they're kind of saying, okay, we think our season's done, but they're kind of still in the thick of things in their division. Like, I don't get why
maybe they believe in Funches a little more.
But still, it's just not, you don't just have one receiver in football. You need multiple guys. You need a number 1, a number 2. You can still have 2,000-yard receivers on the same team. So it's like, there's enough balls to go around. I just don't understand really why they're getting rid of him, unless there's something that we're not seeing yet or hasn't been made public yet about the situation. But I just, I'm a little confused. He has a lot of continuity with Cam. Him and Cam are kind of just starting to get back on the same page now. And another huge factor is Olsen's down. Greg Olsen, their tight end, who's an amazing tight end, arguably one of the best tight ends in football when he's healthy, he's gone. So who is Funches? That's it. That's the only receiver Cam has. Now this guy's going to be getting double, triple teamed. It's just, I don't really understand the move from Carolina's perspective. But maybe they're saying, we're done this year. We're not going to win anything. We're going to blow it up.
Yeah, with how they're playing.
Yeah, maybe.
Wouldn't surprise me. Now, last up and probably the most impactful is Miami Dolphins ship Jay Ajayi for a 4th rounder to the Philadelphia Eagles, which bolster an offense that's number 5 in the league at 129 yards. Yeah. So you're adding premier running back into the fold.
Yeah, this is a scary.
Gerald's got him in fantasy, so he doesn't know what to think.
He's giving me nothing.
He's a little emotional this year because he's had a rough year, but this is scary for the league right now, for the NFL. For a team that's 7-1 and their quarterback is still kind of a little unknown, because everyone kind of looks at Carson Wentz and they're like, okay, this guy looks like he's the real deal, but I don't think we know how good this kid is yet. And I think we're about to find out. And now the one thing that makes me even more worried for the NFL is you're now giving a guy like this more time in the pocket, more play action. Once Jay Ajayi, after 1 or 2 weeks with the Eagles, once he starts to learn the plays and learn everything, you're going to have such a deadly attack out of the backfield with him and LeGarrette Blount.
And even Smallwood.
That Carson Wentz is going to be having all day on some of these play action passes. And another great thing about Jay Ajayi is he's one of the best running backs to pick up the blitz. So he's a all down back. You can have him in there first, second, third down. This guy will pick up blitzes if you need him. He's a solid, tough guy. And even though Peters is down, I do like Vaitai, number 72, as we call him on this show. I like him filling in at left tackle. He played well last week. It was only against the 49ers, so we'll see what it does. But I just think that offensive line with Lane Johnson, Kelsey, they just have so many veteran, solid guys who have kind of made a name for themselves in the NFL that they're kind of holding up the team, if you know what I mean, when it comes to the offensive line. So if I'm the NFL, I'm getting kind of worried, because now you basically are giving Carson Wentz a weapon out of the backfield, and Jay Ajayi can catch passes. He's going to be like this. To put some perspective on it, last season he had 3 games where he ran for 300 yards. The Eagles have I think only once or maybe even never had a 200-yard rushing performance from a running back. So this is a guy that can take the top off the defense. If you let him get out there, he will.
Or run through them.
Or run through them, whatever. The one interesting little caveat just to put on top of it, just so we do kind of pump the brakes a little bit on the Eagles, is that Adam Gase, the coach of Miami, did come out and basically rip the entire team and call like all of the top players out for like not being prepared, not being ready for games, not being professionals. He didn't say any names, but it just seems weird that they got blown out by 40. He makes comments like that. The following week at the deadline, they traded Jay Ajayi. They put Jarvis Landry on the block. He didn't end up getting picked up because their asking value for him was pretty high, so no one really took a bite on him. But they basically were blowing up the team, essentially, like their best wide receiver, the best running back on their team, getting rid of them. So maybe he's talking about those guys, saying those guys weren't prepared to play football every Sunday, but we're about to find out. Because obviously Jay Ajayi is going to be playing on the Eagles, and we'll see what happens.
Okay, so it's safe to say Philly won the trade deadline this year, bolstering
absolutely.
an already deadly offense.
Yeah. The only other move they could have made is Dwayne Brown, if they would have got him, because they were looking into it. They were looking into getting him.
But also, rumor mill too is Calvin Megatron, if he decides to come out of retirement, Philly is one of possible destinations.
The only problem is I think that's kind of sailed with the trade deadline because Detroit still holds his rights.
Okay.
So he would have to be traded to Philadelphia before, or Detroit would have to release him. So we would have to see what happens there, but I think that ship may have sailed.
And now I wanted to highlight just the loser of the draft, because after what went on at the end of the draft with the Cleveland Browns, we can't help but mention it and how horribly run that organization is. Like, James, you have to explain the story of what happened.
Yeah, so basically the Cleveland Browns had agreed to a trade for A.J. McCarron from the Cincinnati Bengals, and I don't know the particulars. You can maybe pull it up, Joe, but I believe it was a third rounder, and there was 2 picks involved. So I think it was 2 picks, so the Bengals would get 2 picks, Cleveland would get A.J. McCarron. Cleveland had signed the deal and sent it to Cincinnati. The only problem is they didn't CC on the email the NFL. So how when it comes to the trade deadline, how it works is when you're submitting a trade and it's close to the deadline, you CC the NFL. The NFL will then reply back to you saying, okay, we've confirmed this part of the deal. We will wait for the other half of the party to sign it. But even if that person signs it and it's past 4 o'clock, the deal will still go through.
You just have to have the preliminaries in.
The preliminaries have to be in before 4. So they basically didn't CC the NFL on the email. The Bengals then didn't see the email until 4:15 because for them they weren't worried about time because the decision was on Cleveland. Like, are you going to make the trade or not? Like, well, this is what we're offering, yes or no. So it was up to Cleveland to make the decision. They obviously decided yes, signed the deal, sent it over to the Bengals. By the time the Bengals got it and were able to sign it, it was past the deadline. So,
but the worst part was why they didn't see it.
So then we get into why they didn't see it. And what makes it even worse is the NFL did call Cleveland's head office just before 4 o'clock to try and confirm to see if there was any trades coming through. And Cleveland basically didn't hear the phone because they were celebrating the trade.
Celebrating the trade that they thought had been put in.
Yes, because they signed it, sent it off.
But didn't CC the NFL.
Didn't CC the NFL, and because of that, because they sent the email at 3:55 p.m., that leaves 5 minutes. So, like, the NFL, if they don't see that within 5 minutes, that's it. Deadline's gone. It's the most Browns thing possible. I think if you want to do a test, if you find someone who hasn't heard this story yet, just tell them the story and ask them which team you think it was. And I guarantee you they would say Cleveland. I just feel bad. I think you may have to just fire everyone after this. Like, first off, in the last 2 years, you've traded away Carson Wentz, essentially. You traded away Deshaun Watson, who are both superstars, and now this. And it was because you didn't CC the NFL? Like, you're making actually, like, little stupid mistakes like that. Like, something's gotta happen here. Like, this cannot go on like this. This is ridiculous. I feel bad for the fans.
Oh, and it was for the 2018 second and third round picks.
Yeah. Just ridiculous.
Which is also kind of a high asking price.
It is a high asking price, but at the end of the day, like, AJ McCarron, we have a little bit more tape on him than we do on a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo. He's looked pretty decent, so you don't really know what you have with him, and they were going to try it, but it's Cleveland being
Maybe
Cleveland.
Hire some new communications people.
Yeah, like have people
that know how to make emails and send them properly.
Carbon copy.
It's bad.
It's maybe the salaries aren't high enough for it. But that ends off the trade deadline news. Next up is our feature game of the week. So last week we picked the Cowboys versus the Washington Redskins in what was a marquee matchup in the NFC. James, you thought that the Washington was going to come out because they did have a good game against Philly the previous week, and it came down.
I just didn't really believe in Dallas that much, so that's why I went with Washington.
So maybe Ezekiel Elliott heard that he was going to get suspended, so he's just like, you know what, this is my last game. Got to go off. But yeah, was a little bit surprising on how big of the difference was, because it just seemed like Washington didn't come to play. And it's weird because I really was a fan of Cousins, and just now it seems like he plays really great one half, and then the next half is a completely different story. He can't make open passes.
Yeah, I just feel like he doesn't play well in big stages or big games. Whenever it's a game that you gotta win, he just doesn't come through. Like it was last year, they were basically on the verge of making the playoffs, where it was they held their own destiny. Win your final season game, and you're in the playoffs. I don't even remember who they played, and they lost. They lost the game.
Was it the Patriots?
It may have been the Patriots. I don't remember. I don't even think it was someone that difficult, or maybe it was the Patriots, but they were sitting there.
They had a chance to win.
Yeah, and the game was close, and the ball was in Kirk Cousins' hands down the stretch. He throws an interception. Just whenever you feel like, okay, you know what, Washington, this is a big game, you gotta win this, I just feel like Kirk Cousins cannot get it done. I do think he'll be out of there next year. I don't think they're gonna pay him the money that he wants. Somebody will definitely pay him the money that he wants, because quarterbacks are so highly coveted in the NFL, but at the end of the day, I think that he struggles in big time moments, but you can't put this game completely on him. He did have some turnovers as well, but when you're getting field goals blocked and ran back and all this kind of stuff, just they didn't show up to play. I was disappointed from like the whole team's perspective. Like, I don't think there was really any unit of the team that played well. The defense struggled, the offense struggled, special teams. It just was not a good showing for them.
Okay, so now this week, we're talking about this week's feature game of the week, which you chose Falcons versus the Carolina Panthers. And in what seems that both teams were kind of had a lot of expectations going into the season and have really disappointed for the most part. Atlanta did, show some life on the offensive end last week, winning, but that's still, they didn't look themselves in the first half, so I'm not completely bought into them yet, but you're saying it's going to be, close game?
I don't necessarily know if it's going to be a close game, but I think it should be a good game, if that makes sense. So It may not end to be close, but it should be a good game, because first off, it's a division rival. So whenever you have division rivals in the NFL, it's always those teams play better against each other, because they just see each other every year, guaranteed. Because obviously with the amount of games that are in the NFL schedule and teams that are in the NFL, you can't play everyone every year, every season. So you rotate through a lot of teams. But divisional games, you play each team twice. So there's always that little bit more animosity when it comes to a divisional rivalry. And I think both of these teams are kind of on the cusp. We just talked a little bit about Carolina before in the deadline when they got rid of Calvin Benjamin. We're not sure what direction they're going in. But both teams are kind of on the cusp of like, are they going to possibly make playoffs this year? Are they going to bust this year? You have, obviously, Atlanta made Super Bowl last year. Everyone had high hopes for them, but they've struggled out of the gate. Carolina made the Super Bowl 2 years ago. They've basically struggled ever since going to the Super Bowl. So I think this is a good matchup for one of these teams to try and get on track and see where they're going. I think it's more of a must-win for Atlanta, though, because Atlanta does have the worst, not as good of a record.
Yeah.
And I just think based on what we've seen, they've had the more question marks. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
This was a tough game to pick. So that's going to be, you're picking the Falcons, James?
I am going to pick the Falcons, yes.
Okay, so that's your lock for feature game of the week. Now, I'm going to have to agree with you. I was very close on it, based if Calvin Benjamin was still on the team. But now, like you said, we don't really know the direction Carolina is going to go, how this is going to impact Cam Newton, because he was pretty close with Calvin Benjamin. So do you really trust Funches as a number one wide receiver for them? And another thing, right? Atlanta played well. Julio finally scored a touchdown. So it's looking like there's something positive that you can take away of this offense, but they still got to figure out those lapses where they just don't score and just let teams come back into games. But my pick's going to be the Falcons. And Gerald, what are you saying?
It's two teams on their heels. And I mean, Carolina's impressed me more this season than they did last season coming off that Super Bowl. Falcons, they haven't had a lot of good games this season, but I'm going to go with them because I feel like there's too much uncertainty going on in Carolina right now.
So it's unanimous. Yeah. All three of us going for the Falcons. Okay.
So let's see if we can all have a good week this week.
Okay, so to finish off the NFL segment, we're going to throw it to you two, James and Gerald, and do the undisputed top 10 NFL.
Yep, and this is the first week where things have stayed relatively stable. We're getting into the thick of things here in the NFL season. Starting off at number 10, we have the Panthers.
Yeah, so Panthers, I was debating dropping them out because of that trade, but I want to give them another week to see how they're doing. They are definitely on the fringe, though, because their wins have been okay, but they've had some pretty disappointing losses so far this year, games where you thought they should have won and they just didn't show up. So, yeah, they're on the fringe right now. We'll see what happens. A big game for them this weekend.
Yep, holding on to that number 9 spot from last week, it's the Bills.
Yeah, I really like what I'm seeing from the Bills. I think the Bills are basically just praying that Brady goes down, and now, especially the Patriots don't have a backup QB, they can maybe make the playoffs in the division. But I think this is a team that can definitely get a wild card in the NFC or the AFC, so this should be interesting to go down the stretch.
The Saints are down 1 spot from last week at number 8.
Yeah, so Saints, even though they were on a bye, I believe, the week just passed. So I didn't want to move them too much, but, based on other teams doing well, they had to be just dropped down just a little bit.
Yep, and the team that took their spot is the Seahawks, up from 8 last week.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit of a knee-jerk overreaction, but that game against Houston, so impressed with what I saw from Seattle. Now, also adding in the fact that they just got the trade at the trade deadline to bolster their offensive line. That's only going to make this team better. I think that's a team that the Eagles are probably going to compete with down the stretch here for getting out of the NFC.
At number 6, we've got the Vikings.
Yeah, Vikings, even though they don't really have a solid quarterback right now, like what I'm seeing from Case Keenum, he's playing well. They're winning the games they should win. They do have a decent team around him, so right now they're kind of hovering around 6 and 7 or 5 and 6, but we'll see what happens. They may drop a little bit just based on other teams getting better.
And the Rams have slid from number 4 to number 5.
Yeah, once again, the Rams are on a bye, so I don't like to move a lot of teams too much when they're on a bye, so they didn't really necessarily move, just teams jumped up ahead of them. So yeah, they're kind of just where they are.
And taking their spot are the Steelers.
Yeah, Steelers, like what I'm seeing from them. They had an impressive win against Detroit. It wasn't too crazy, but Detroit is a good team. I like what I've seen from Matt Stafford this year. And Pittsburgh was able to hold them only to 15 points, so I was impressed with their defense. So yeah, that's where they got the 4th spot.
At number 3, not able to reclaim the number 1 spot, are the Chiefs.
Yeah, Kansas City. I was a little unimpressed with their win against Denver on Monday Night Football. They played okay, but they also got 5 turnovers from Denver and only won by, I believe, a touchdown. So I'm looking at that to say, wait, let me get this straight. A team gave you the ball 5 times and the game was a lot closer than it should have been. I think there's some problems that are starting to manifest themselves in Kansas City. We'll see what happens going down the stretch. Not saying they're not a good team, but they don't deserve to be number 1 or 2 this week.
And at number 2 are the Patriots.
Yeah, Patriots, obviously they've played extremely well. Like everything I see from them, they did get rid of their backup QB, but with the way Brady's playing and his diet that he's releasing and trying to get everyone on, I'm confident that he's going to be playing well into his 40s. So until then, you'll always see him at the top.
And at the top are the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, Eagles were 1 last week. They finally jumped up into the ranking, kept them at 1 this week. The Jay Ajayi trade has a little bit to do with it, but they did also win again this week, and they do have the best record in the NFL. So right now, they're the class of the NFL.
And that's it for the Underdawgs Undisputed Top 10.
Okay, so now jumping into the NBA, the topic that we chose was which team should be panicking more. So we have Golden State Warriors, Cleveland Cavaliers, and San Antonio Spurs, all for different reasons. Now you have San Antonio still not healthy. Start off the year strong. Now looks like they're struggling. Kind of teams are not catching them by surprise, but they're targeting them now because they know Leonard's out. You have the Golden State Warriors, who seem to be losing their composure a lot more than they should be returning as champions. And then Cleveland, you have a lot of pieces still trying to integrate, and it's key losses against Orlando, Brooklyn. So what would you say? Who should be hitting the panic button more, James?
Panic button, I think that's a little too strong of a word. I think the team that should be most worried now out of all the teams is probably Cleveland, and I would almost say just by default, just because Golden State, their problems are kind of emotional problems, and they'll figure that stuff out as the season wanes, but, at least I think they're mature enough to figure it out eventually. But they've just had kind of problems, the fighting on the court, throwing mouth guards, just getting upset at officiating. I think that stuff will pick up, and they're starting to learn that they're getting everyone's best shot, and it's different when you win a championship to the point where everyone wants to knock you off. So I think they're kind of feeling that a little bit early in the season. That's why we've seen a lot of maybe teams that are not great play really well against them. So I wouldn't worry too much about them. Spurs, I don't even want to really get into, because I think the fact that you're missing Leonard, like if Durant was missing off Golden State or if LeBron was missing off Cleveland, would you be worried at all? Not at all, because they're missing the best player on their team. So I think until Leonard comes back and we start to see what Popovich has got going on over there, I'm not really too worried about them. But as for Cleveland, I'm kind of worried because they really need Isaiah. They really, really need Isaiah, and I'm kind of worried that when Isaiah comes back, is he going to be the same Isaiah as before? Like, we don't really fully know yet. They are extremely deep, but I think that's another reason why I worry. They have a lot of egos on that team. They have a lot of guys who think and kind of demand playing time. So it'll be interesting to see how they kind of manage all the personalities, and if Lou is kind of like the one that everyone listens to, or is it kind of like LeBron's kind of managing things under the wing? Because I don't think it's a good idea for that to be happening with this specific team, just because of the LeBron and Dwayne Wade dynamic where they're just so close. So I think Ty Lue does have to be the one to kind of put his foot down, kind of let everyone know, look, I'm running the ship. This is what we're going to be doing. This is what I need from you, just so everyone kind of knows their place. But I just think because there's so many pieces in Cleveland coming together right now, and the Isaiah question mark, I would be more worried if I'm Cleveland.
Okay. I would say I'm more worried about the Warriors than actually Cleveland, just because, first of all, we have LeBron, and second of all, with Dwayne Wade being relegated to the bench upon his own decision in approaching Tyronn Lue. I think that sets the tone for other guys to just check themselves. I know JR kind of was complaining that he wasn't in the starting lineup and he kind of got his way, which I don't really agree with, especially with how he's been playing. But at this point, every guy that's there has bought into the system. That's why they're there. Jay Crowder already said he doesn't care about starting. He's there for if you need him for 2 minutes or 25 minutes or starting. So they have a great collection of guys that, definitely have ego. Every basketball player to be in the NBA, you have to have an ego. You were the best player your whole life. And then you come to the NBA. But guys like Jeff Green, the guys that were big name picks and played a lot with OKC with Durant and Westbrook. These guys are checking themselves at the door, willing to take whatever minutes they have, learning from LeBron James. You have Derrick Rose taking minimums. Like I think it's all setting a precedent for having a solid championship run. And these are just kind of like the in and outs. You're just trying to figure out whose role is which. Because, like you said, Isaiah is still coming back. So throw in Isaiah, now that puts a wrench in everything that they've been doing now. So I do kind of like that Lue has a little more freeway and he's able to play guys a lot more minutes now. With the Warriors, it's just guys are getting thrown out left, right, and center. And I understand that, it's just emotions, and they have to understand that teams are coming at them and they do want that win on their record. I just think that's not an excuse. A lot of the comments they made where everyone's afraid of them, they're scrambling, they're all laughing. I'm the one, and I think all the other teams are laughing at these guys because, what guy in the NBA will throw a mouth guard at an official because he didn't get a call that he expected? Imagine if any other guy that wasn't on the Warriors did that. And we actually have something that happened similar in the playoffs with Udonis Haslem, where he threw a mouth guard at the ground and it bounced towards the official and he got suspended a game. Mm-hmm. And you have Steve Kerr laughing about, Steph Curry should get 8-10 games. He endangered so many thousands of fans, and it's just the arrogance of the team. I feel that's going to hurt them. And, they came in thinking they have the deepest team, Swaggy P is going to come in and kill it for them. And I just think they're for a rude awakening. They did pick up a big win against the Clippers, but I watched that game and the Clippers didn't show up. And
the Clippers, I don't think are necessarily that great of a team. But what I would say back to that, and just a little bit also on the Cleveland side, is I do understand that a lot of guys on Cleveland are checking their egos at the door, and everyone's kind of saying the right thing. But guys are just not playing well.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And when the problem with guys are not playing well, you can say, okay, yeah, I'll come off the bench, I'll get the water, I'll clean your shoes, I'll do whatever. But at the end of the day, the coach has to put all these guys in the right position where they feel comfortable coming into work and being around the other guys on the team and dropping their ego at the door, but also getting the most out of them. That's why I think Popovich is such a great coach, because every player you give him, he'll find a way to get the most out of that person for what he needs. I'm just kind of worried when I look at Cleveland and I see all this talent and you're struggling against some easy teams that are playing well. And you also have the kind of thing where Golden State has, where guys are coming after you. Everyone wants to beat you. You're the team that has LeBron. You're the team to beat in the East. So I do understand that, but I'm just worried that JR, I'm waiting for this guy's sighting this year. Derrick Rose has been okay, but injured a couple games, and even the games he's there, he hasn't played great. Jay Crowder, he's been struggling as well, even though he's been playing good defense and playing good, getting good rebounds and stuff like that. He's been struggling offensively. Kevin Love has also been struggling offensively, which is weird to see because there's more minutes available for him now and more opportunities for him now. And LeBron is not hogging the ball. He's giving guys opportunities. The best players on the team right now are LeBron and Kyle Korver. When you look at statistics, those are the two guys who are
oddly enough. Well,
those
LeBron,
are the two
not so
guys
odd,
that are playing well right now on the team, and the rest of the roster is struggling. And I think that all comes down to finding where D Wade needs to go, where JR needs to go, where are they happiest, where are they contributing the most. Yeah. And the last quick thing I'll just mention about Golden State on your thing about Golden State is another reason why I'm not really worried about Golden State is because even though they are losing games and they're 4-3, their record's not great, but the guys that need to play well are playing well. We got Durant playing well. You got Steph Curry playing well. Klay Thompson's playing well. Draymond definitely needs to step up offensively, but Draymond's never really been a big offensive threat, so it is what it is.
The offense is never the issue. It's just their defense is atrocious. Last year they were still good defensively. I don't know what happened. Maybe they just don't care anymore. Like they just know they're gonna make it and
they know they're gonna score 130, so they say screw it.
Yeah. But they haven't been. That's the problem. Like,
you know, for me, the thing is I agree that I think all three teams have cause to worry. I think the Warriors have the easiest fix. Stop being emotional. You know what you need to do.
Yeah.
Stop. With the Spurs, I think the comparison that you made with Cleveland, James, where the Spurs get everything they need out of their players, they have good coaching. I think Cleveland is vastly more talented than the Spurs. They have so much more natural talent. Guys who have been all-stars. Guys who have so much experience in this league. And they can't pull it together.
Yeah, it's kind of worrying.
Yeah. The thing with the Spurs that I'm seeing now is there's a bigger difference than Kawhi Leonard between the Spurs and the Pacers. The Spurs, the difference between the Cavaliers and the Spurs is the same difference between the Spurs and the Pacers. The Pacers are not a good team. Yeah. At all. They should not be beating the Spurs.
No, absolutely.
And then to follow that up with a loss to Boston, who is they're streaking right now. They're a good team. I'm still a little bit worried about the Spurs because their dynasty has to end at some point, and they need to remember that. They're not always going to be the steady Spurs.
Yeah.
So watch out for that.
I just think because you have a guy like Leonard who hasn't even played yet this season, we don't even know, is he going to take another leap? Is he going to be even better than he was last year?
The thing I'm going to say about the Spurs is, Leonard is out, but the main problem is you have LaMarcus Aldridge, who's averaging 25 points, so significantly improved from last year. So he's stepping up. Next one is Rudy Gay and Green, 11 points. Yeah, you're getting minutes, you have to produce. And that worries me because you put in Leonard. It's not a two-man show's not gonna run even with Pop because the West is very dangerous. Mm-hmm. So you're not gonna be facing, Minnesota of a few years ago, Utah of a few years ago. These are tough defensive teams.
I guess as well, another thing when I'm looking at all of these who's in more trouble is I'm kind of predicting forward where this team's supposed to go. So basically the way I'm looking at it for Cleveland, championship or bust, because we know you're getting out of the East. That's not a debate. Golden State's obviously championship or bust. Like you won last year, you favored.
There's no real expectation.
Spurs, I don't really have a lot of Western Conference Finals. Yeah, I could see that.
They could catch the Warriors off guard.
Yeah, I could see that. That's why I'm not really too worried about the Spurs because I'm not really comparing the Spurs to Cleveland and Golden State because I don't really think the Spurs have that much of an opportunity to beat Golden State. I think Cleveland has a better opportunity to beat them.
Now, just to finish off with Cleveland, how you mentioned that guys like JR are playing horrible that need to step up. That's JR. JR is streaky, so I fully expect that in 2 weeks he's not gonna miss a shot. But it also, for guys like that are playing bad, it opens up the door for guys that are playing well, like a guy Tristan Thompson who started the year off the bench. Now he's inserted in the starting lineup just to add a little more toughness because I think Kevin Love is pretty much playing like a perimeter player, so they're losing a lot of that perimeter presence, not having him there. And I've been pretty impressed with Tristan taking, that 6-man role right off the bat. He had no complaints. And that's what I see this team. You have LeBron James. You come here to win a championship. So whether they need you for 1 minute or 25 minutes. And I know it's easier said than done because these guys are all, superstars in their own minds. But when you're looking up at a guy like LeBron James, you gotta give in,
I totally agree with everything you just said. Like I'll say again though, the only thing about it, I agree everyone's checking their ego. They're not playing well, man.
Definitely not, but
there's a lot of guys that are just Like Wade, extreme question marks about Wade. Like what happened to you, man? Like JR, step up. Like can
Rose's
you show up to a
revival.
game? Like Rose, like maybe stay healthy. Like it's just there's a lot of stuff here.
Here's the last thing I'll say on Cleveland. I don't like their roster right now. I think last year they had a roster that could win a ring in this league. I don't know. Like Tristan shouldn't have had to be put on the bench, play well to get back on it this year. That shouldn't have happened. He should have been playing from the beginning.
Yeah.
I don't think they needed all these big names, which is essentially all they've been.
I do think Cleveland messed up at the beginning of the year by taking those guys out of the starter lineup.
Yeah.
I think they
Leave
should have
them.
just rolled into the unit. The guys who have
Keep
been
the
here
consistent
before
one,
were
yeah.
the starters. Let's roll with
Let
that.
them lose
Let's
that
add
spot.
these bench guys in here and there. But Tyronn Lue, I just think that's one place where he's dropped the ball already this year. And if this team wants to win a ring, unlike you, Gerald, I do believe this team is talented enough to win a ring. I think they're the deepest team in the league. And if they can figure it out, and when I say if Tyronn Lue can figure it out, this team will be good. But
No,
right
I
now,
still think they can win a ring. I just think they had a team that could win a ring last year too.
yeah, this is right now. He needs to move around his chess pieces and set up the game so that everyone's kind of playing well, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Okay. So moving on to the feature game of the week from last week, I chose Minnesota and OKC just because of how the first game ended off, coming down to a controversial buzzer beater where Wiggins hit a 30-footer, banker three for the win after Carmelo hit what seemed to be the dagger to go up by one. So there was a little bit of a revenge factor coming in with OKC, so I was really expecting their top game. That being said, I did choose Minnesota because I just felt that at home, and the way they've been playing, they have the upper hand and being a little more consistent than OKC, which are trying to integrate those three big superstars in Paul George, Carmelo Anthony, and Russell Westbrook. Now, Minnesota ended up winning the game, which was pretty close. It was a little bit different storyline because Wiggins struggled for most of the night. The big performance was Karl Anthony Towns coming in with 33 and 19 rebounds. So it's looking like he's starting to get his groove back from last year, having that monster year, and no one's more happy than me who have him in fantasy.
Yeah, no doubt.
Now, were you surprised, James, that Minnesota won that game? Because
Yeah, so obviously I picked OKC, so I was kind of rooting for OKC to win.
it's a toss-up. It could have
I
won
just
either.
thought based on how the last game ended, I really had a lot of faith in Westbrook. I thought he would kind of really show up and show out for this game. Both teams played well. Like you said, it was another close game. Could have gone either way, but yeah, so far, both of these two teams look like they're going to be teams that are going to finish pretty high in the Western Conference. They both look pretty decent.
Yep. And Minnesota obviously coached by Tom Thibodeau, but surprisingly haven't been as good defensively as you would think, being 24th, I believe, in the league.
Especially when you have a guy like Wiggins and Towns.
Yeah, Butler.
These
Who's
are all
been
great
all defense
These are all
every year.
great defensive
All younger
guys.
players
So
too.
I think it's maybe just the system and the scheme they're still trying to grasp.
yeah.
So we'll see what
A
happens.
lot of teams have, switched drastically over the summer, so it's integrating all those pieces, finding all those roles. I feel like once a month into the season, we'll start getting really accurate projections on where teams stand. That being said, our feature of the game of the week this week.
Oh, hold on. Did I pick the Timberwolves?
Yeah, me and Gerald picked Minnesota. You picked OKC last week. And for the Dallas-Washington, it was James and Gerald picked Washington, and I was the Lone Ranger in Dallas.
So I'm starting the season 0-2. You guys you're 2-0, Pat, and you're 1-1.
So
So-
it's
no,
one
2
NFL,
I'm
one.
2-0.
No, you picked Washington.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh.
I have it written down as Washington.
I picked Washington as well.
Well, we'll confirm.
Yeah, we'll pull the tape.
Yeah,
Tape
we
can be
need
pulled.
accurate numbers here.
Tape can be pulled. We'll find out. But I'm almost positive Joe picked Washington.
Okay, so feature game of the week in the NBA now coming up is Cleveland versus Washington. Who do you got on this? Two teams going opposite directions.
Yeah, I'm taking Cleveland, though.
You're taking Cleveland.
I think they're going to get back on track. Not fully, but I think they're going to get back on track a little bit here. I think they're going to take this one as kind of a gauge-out game to kind of test themselves against the rest of the East, see where they are. Kind of how they did come out against Boston. So, yeah, I'm taking Cleveland.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you just because LeBron has the Washington's number. Even when I thought last year they were going to lose, he hit that banker 3 to send it to OT, which ended up being an incredible game. So I'm going to have to pick Cleveland for that. And Gerald, what do you got?
I'm trying to find a reason to pick Washington.
Honestly,
there's a lot of reasons, but I think Cleveland is going to bounce back at some point. It might be a slow bounce back, maybe like 1 bounce up, 2 bounces back. But I think the bounce back is going to be against Washington. Two
teams that are right now heading in opposite directions. With Cleveland, we've mentioned on and on in the pod about their struggles and what they have to do. Washington was a team that, started the year off pretty aggressively. Warriors took a little bit of wind out of their sail with the dramatics that went down that game. And it really looked like the Wizards were going to pull away almost up by 20. Ended up losing that. So that was a little bit of a downer for them. And, they're still looking to recover, but they picked up a few good wins this week, that unfortunately wasn't enough to get them in the top 10. Spoiler alert. Yeah. But, that's actually coming up next.
Yep, and starting off at number 10 in our NBA Underdawgs Undisputed Top 10, we have the Spurs at the lowest spot they've ever been on this list.
Yeah, shocking. It's just a tough week right now. They had a rough week, definitely going 1-3. But it's clear that having Leonard out of the lineup has made a significant impact because they started the year 4-0. Now they've lost 3 in a row. I still wanted to keep them obviously as high as I can, but it's just the way this week has went and how good Boston has played, which we'll get into next, that they did get bumped this high. LaMarcus Aldridge, I mentioned, has picked up the scoring, but they're having trouble finding that secondary scorer in third. But one guy I would like to mention that Pop has actually been given a lot of praise, that said this guy's a really aggressive player, and his style of 3-and-D is that Brandon Paul. So he's been a guy that's taken advantage of the games or the minutes that he's gotten now with Leonard out, especially shooting the 3. He's hit at least 2 threes in 3 of the last 4 games. So he's showing that he can hit the NBA 3-pointer at a consistent rate, plus the defensive side is just a bonus. So I still look to see them a little improved in next week.
Yep, and up next at number 9, the Celtics have clawed their way back up.
Yeah, so they're the hottest team in the NBA. I had to put them in. They've won 5 in a row. Big wins coming against Milwaukee and San Antonio, of course. But it's really Kyrie the mentor now. So the young guys like Jaylen Brown and Tatum have really shown up. So I'm really surprised about that. And they're doing this all with Marcus Morris out. So he's projected to be in the lineup in the next few weeks, but he has been practicing with the team, so that is good news, and they're gonna get him back pretty soon. So important games this week against OKC and Orlando for them will really move them up in the rankings.
Up next, number 8, another team that's dropped far below where they usually are, the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Yeah, it's trying times in Cleveland. I'm only giving them respect of being in the top 10 because of LeBron James and how much I love this guy. So it's definitely been a brutal start to the season. And they had this air it out meeting on Tuesday to kind of talk about what's going on and maybe, roles. But they're still looking to integrate Rose, Wade, Green, and Crowder, which all have been variously struggling at different times. Even JR and Kevin Love, guys who have been, consistent guys on the team, are not really producing in the way we expected them. So its big issue is their lack of intensity on defense that I've noticed that have really hurt them. I don't know if it's they're expecting teams to bow down to them, but they just haven't given that consistent effort on the defensive end that a champion is expected to. So playing against Indiana, Washington, and Atlanta this week. They're going to have to turn around that 1-3 week that they had this week if they're going to stay in the top 10. Because unfortunately, this week was it. I can't do it anymore, LeBron.
Yeah. Don't lose another game. Up next at number 7 are the Magic.
They're starting to get their number 7. Yeah, I name these guys the Knockout Kings because they'll either beat you by 20 or they'll lose the game. And picked up big wins against Cleveland, San Antonio, and the Pelicans. But I think they were the most pleasant surprise of the year. And their most impressive is they're doing it without their starting point guard and Elfrid Payton being out the last 5 games. So it makes it more impressive. And second ranked offense, first ranked in 3-point shots. So they're definitely lethal. So if you're not guarding the perimeter, it's going to be a long night for you. And pretty early yank for the starters. So upcoming games against Memphis and Boston this week are highlighted. So we'll see if they move up from 7.
At number 6, the Oklahoma City Thunder.
So these guys are starting to get their groove. They had a 3-1 week this week, and highlighted by that big win last night against Milwaukee, where they pretty much held Giannis in check. So for once, it looked like their defense was stepping up, and guys who like Andre Robertson are not chucking up air balls, which is always good, but it looked like he was finally engaged in the offensive end, not just the defensive end. He hit a few shots. He even blew out a kiss to the crowd who chanted air ball, just to entice him because, he's had notoriously struggled with his shot, so it's good to see him playing better, and it's just looking like an offensive juggernaut. I would not be surprised once they start settling into their roles. They're going to be the top offensive team because Westbrook has bought in. He doesn't care if he takes 5 shots or 55 shots. He's going to play the best he can, and he's going to distribute the ball, which I was actually surprised so far this year at how well he was able to sacrifice his shots.
Climbing to the 5 spot from number 7 are the Timberwolves.
Yeah, it's surprising because Tom Thibodeau, who is a defensive-minded coach, is struggling on defense, but they have the 4th ranked offense. Big part of that is Jeff Teague, who for the first 3 games of the season averaged 10 points, 5 assists. He's now doubled that in the past 2 games. And real shout out to Jamal Crawford. I really like his that addition in the offseason, and having his punch off the bench has really improved this Minnesota team, and it looks like Tom really trusts him in late game situations.
At number 4, the Raptors tying their highest spot ever.
Yeah, they could have just as easily won against Golden State and San Antonio, which is why I actually moved them up on the list even after the losses, because I do see them as positives. Because they came down to the 1 possession, and really if they just played with a little bit of heart against San Antonio, they would have won that game. But they had strong defensive games surprisingly against Portland, where they only allowed 6 points in the second quarter, and this was without JV and Ibaka. Mm-hmm. So this is throwing a little bit of question marks where your marquee players aren't playing and you're having the best game of the season defensively. It just shows how big the young guys have stepped up for the Raptors this year. I can't say enough about total 14 rebounds against the Golden State Warriors. Mm-hmm. Upcoming games against Denver, Utah, and Washington are all tough, and it will end their 6-game road streak, which I should say is West Coast torture. Yeah. Torture streak. But, they're in the top 5, and I'm quite happy about it. Yeah, hopefully they stay there.
Mm-hmm. At number 3, the Houston Rockets claiming their spot from last week.
Yeah, they lost to Memphis and Philly, so it's tough really after picking up wins in Philly and Charlotte. So I didn't want to move them too much because they've been consistent at 2-2. But one thing that hasn't been consistent is their shooting, and a big part of that is Ryan Anderson, who is surprisingly on the road shoots a remarkable 46% from 3, and at home only 33%. So I think these are another team that are just trying to get their groove and their roles down, especially with Chris Paul going down early. So I'm willing to give them a little more leeway in the next few weeks just to see how they respond, but not really tough schedule. You got the Knicks, Atlanta, and Utah coming up, so I fully expect them to win those games.
Climbing from 5 back up to number 2 are the Warriors.
Yeah, not quite over the hill yet, and honestly, the only reason they aren't number 1 is because Memphis does hold the 1-game win against them. It just seems when teams slow the Warriors down and they don't get, those 80, 90 shots a game, it's hard for them to find their offense, and the main thing is their defense is just getting picked apart when Draymond's not on the floor. I'm not trying to say that, this is alarm bells are ringing, even though personally I do think so. But I think that the Warriors will definitely show how well they do this week with playing San Antonio and Miami.
Mm-hmm. Staying in the number 1 spot, the Memphis Grizzlies, just barely hanging on.
Yep, the grit and grind is barely hanging on. JaMychal Green and Ben McLemore have been out most of the season, so from what I've read, they're expected back in the next few weeks, so that will bolster an already potent offense that they have. But 2-2 on the week. I wanted to drop them number 1, but really all the teams didn't really move up much. Everyone really struggled. And that big win against Golden State kind of keeps them up there. So we'll see if they'll be there next year. But shout-outs to Chandler Parsons, who had his best career game against the Houston Rockets, actually, in 2 years. So for those who don't know, he signed a big max deal. So there was a lot of expectations for him, which he's been really injured most of his career, so hasn't really lived up to it. And he actually was booed on his home floor, so he made kind of comments that he was rattled at the fans, that he wasn't getting the respect that he deserves. And so it was good to see him have a really good game, and hopefully he can continue it, because he's a guy that I really like, and I didn't realize he's 6'10" and he plays like a guard. So that's I really do hope that he finds his groove off the bench in Memphis, and they keep that number 1 spot.
Yep, and that's it for Underdawgs Undisputed Top 10 NBA edition.
Yep, and so finishing off the show, we'll do. Actually, what's the time now? Over an hour, yeah. So we're just gonna do fantasy roundup because UFC didn't really have time for that, so we'll do a UFC review. Big card coming up this weekend. It's going to be GSP's return versus Bisping. We have Joanna Jacek defending her title against Thug Rose is her nickname. And then we have Cody Garbrandt versus Dillashaw. So 3 title fights that are going to be massive. That should be all on individual main events, but we're kind of blessed that we have all 3 in this card. So I'm looking forward to that. And we'll definitely have a review of that and what happened, because there's definitely going to be a lot to talk about next week. And to finish off the show, we'll do fantasy roundup. Obviously, nothing's changed for James. He just keeps winning in everything.
Yep. Somehow.
Just keeps taking dubs.
So what is it, 6 or 7-0 in football?
8-0.
8-0 in football and 2-0 in basketball.
Yeah, still early in basketball though.
Look at you, humble.
Haven't really been tested in basketball yet.
Yeah, but football, you gotta go the full season now.
Yeah, I guess I haven't really been tested in football either, but we'll see.
Wow,
he's played like everybody. Haven't been tested.
Yeah, wow, shots fired.
Yeah,
I think this time.
I mean,
the record speaks for itself.
Yeah, look up my points for and points against too. Like it just
true enough.
Domination all over. So yeah.
I think this time last week I was up on Pat in our NBA fantasy.
You took the loss, though.
And my guys ended up choking, and everybody played horribly.
Well, that being said, you're also missing your 2 best players,
That's
so
true.
I'm not going to complain.
Didn't stop people from getting dropped, though.
I'm not going to complain being 2-0 in NBA. It's finally something I can be excited about, because me and Gerald are right now 4-3 in the NFL, so I'm 5th right now, so I'm out of the playoffs, and the potential to get my chest wax, which is not what I'm looking forward to at all.
It's going to be our punishment this year for the loser.
So yeah, that's going to be our challenge for the loser in the NFL fantasy. So I need those positive thoughts, because I definitely need it the next coming week. I pretty much looked at the schedule. I have to win, keep winning, or else
Yeah.
But that's our show. Thank you all for listening. You can check us out on Facebook at Underdog Podcasts. Also our YouTube channel where we upload our weekly podcasts. And let us know what you think. And check out our Twitter, Instagram.
Night, everybody. Night, everybody. Night, everybody. Night, everybody. Night, everybody. Night, everybody. Night, everybody.